afternoon. Let me say thank you. This is a great opportunity for being together, and as all of the other speakers said, it's fantastic to be able to do it face-to-face with the people in the room. I've had the pleasure of being part of the agenda in these events in the past 3 or 4 times, and again, I mean, today it's kind of a double dip having a chance to do it. I'm also very pleased to be able to do it with Hélène Lyon, that apart from being a Z architect forever, she's also a distinguished engineer. And I'm sure you all know her. So over the next 20 minutes or so, and it might be a couple more, and I'm unfortunately famous for going slightly, I'll say slightly over the agenda timing, but I'll do my best not to do it today. Really, the next 20 minutes, apart from your goal is really to survive through my charts and then get to the bonus, which is the presentation of Hélène, right? That's why we got distinguished engineers on board, right, to fix what sales managers mess up. Three things I like to take you through, right? An update on the Z platform strategy, and even if I'm spelling them out separately, these elements are all very tightly interconnected. When we talk about Z, we talk about Z stack. And there's nothing that can be done engineering the platform without taking into account all of the elements of the stack, meaning the hardware, the operating system, the middleware, and all of the rest of the tools. So I'll share with you what we're doing with the platform, with the hardware and software, what are the key focus areas going forward, and then we'll have some quick look at futures as the time allows. 3 parts really to the presentation, and the first one is really sharing with you what we're doing to ensure that Z stays the most technologically advanced platform of all of the IBM's ones. Then, of course, I mean, what we're doing to make sure that it stays very current in terms of business continuity and resilience, and we want to keep it as secureable as possible. There's no platform which is totally secure, but I would say that Z is the most secureable, meaning reducing the threats, the growing threats that we've got. And then I will leave it to Hélène to take us through the last part, which is really what we're doing to ensure that we properly integrate in a bidirectional way, so inbound and outbound Z into the cloud, because there are benefits to both. So let's start and jump in with the technological part. I mean, I'm sure most of you have been around in Z for a while, right? Some others might have joined and enjoyed the benefits over time. Let me share a couple of charts that tell you how we got to today. So this is a 57-year-old journey, and hopefully there'll be another 57 coming next. But I mean, you might recognize some of the hardware machines up here. It stops on Z15 because I'm going to separately recap on some of the goodies attached to the latest version of Z that was mentioned before, which is Z15, introduced a couple of years ago. You can see, I mean, IBM on regular basis has been upgrading the hardware and the software on the platform, doing some quantum leaps in terms of technology. As an example, you see, so all of this is CMOS technology all the way up to Z14 and Z15. If you look at how small circuits become, we started out here, and this in information technology seems like a long time. This was year 2000, 189 nanometers silicon on insulator, and it's coming all the way down to 14. And you know, in the industry we are working together with other players, we think that the physical limitation is probably 3 or 4 nanometers. So we are approaching it, but there's plenty to go. If you look at the size of the engines, right, we were at 16, building all the way up, 170. The Z15 brings it to 190. There are more engines in the Z15, but 190 are the ones that customers can use, right, on the machine. And so a lot of evolution. And the other one, if you look at the clock, so one of the ways of getting higher performance is boosting the clock, the speed of the clock. But you've seen that starting with Z196 all the way up to Z15, which is always 5.2 gigahertz, we are not going up with the clock for a reason, because I mean, once you get to this kind of clock, 5 point some gigahertz, you're not going to get a kick in terms of performance just by boosting the clock. So it's kind of hitting the limit of what you can do in terms of performance from this point of view. sorry, one too many. Another way of looking at this is the chip design, right? And similar quantum leap, I would say, from a generation to another. As I said, only back here we were with the ECBC12 generation at 32 nanometers. As I said, now we're at 14, also with Z15. If you look at the processor, what we've been doing is there are processors that are becoming chips always smaller, much more powerful, and with a much higher number of cores. We were at 4, 6, 8, 10, and then as you will see, I mean, Z15 was 12. So let me recap on the goodies of Z15, right? So we encourage customers to keep always current on the technology in terms of hardware and software, because it's a way to get the better boost in terms of performance and the higher return on investment. So I was saying 190 processors, the ones that you can configure, 12-core chip, 14 nanometer zTechnical and insulator technology, running, as I said, at 5.2. Now, in blue, I've highlighted some of the key enhancements that we went through with the design of Z15 and required deep innovation in terms of hardware and software. And one is around Z15 is the first generation of hardware that has an on-chip acceleration of compression. It was referred to as ZEDC. And this is important because it allows you, of course, to manage the big wave of data that is available in the transition to cloud. And it's also important for batch because it's helping customers address and run the batch window faster, right? So executing it in a faster way without going into other areas. And for customers running Java and ZOS, this was not new to Z15. It was introduced originally with Z14, is the postless garbage collection. I will show in a minute why it's important, but basically it's a way of boosting the transaction throughput of a Java workload under ZOS with this new process. And we kept it and we invested in upgrading this postless garbage collection on the Z15. Cryptography has always been a stronghold of Z or Z, and we keep on going with the new generation of the crypto cards, and also this is important. Why? As I'll touch later in the presentation, we got a potential challenge. Actually, it's a sure challenge. It's only a matter of time. You know that IBM and other companies are working really hard on developing a next kind of computers that are quantum computers, right? These computers, once that we get them stable, they're going to be extremely powerful. And it's a matter of time before they will become extremely capable in cracking any kind of existing cryptographic algorithm. But already with Z15, IBM introduced quantum safe encryption that can allow you to prepare the ground and make sure that your cryptography stays safe as the journey to quantum makes further progression. On Z15, again, we introduced something that is very important from a reliability point of view, which is the SRB, the System Recovery Boost, which basically, knock on wood, is a way in which the system can restart much faster ZOS and all of the subsystems in case of an event, whether it's planned or unplanned. So it really brings you back to business, knock on wood, if you have an outage, I mean, way faster than you could do again easier on earlier technology. Postless garbage collection, and it's a bit, at least it's interesting graphically, right? I said it's been announced on Z14 and enhanced on Z15. Why is it important? If you're running Java code on ZOS, or Java code anyhow has a process which is called Java garbage collection, which is really cleaning up, let's say, all of the area. And what graphically you see as a bit of a joke, what was happening before we enhanced it is that your transactions in Java would kind of pile up after the garbage track. And when garbage collection was taking place, you were stopping your transactions, queuing behind it, and waiting till you could recover your transactions. With Z14, we introduced this postless Java garbage collection, and we further enhanced it on Z15 so that now the processes can run in parallel. And your throughput goes up a lot, right? We're talking about a 3x better throughput and 10x better average post times. And of course, this is important in terms of performance because you get a real boost if you're running Java on ZOS. Let me tell you what we're doing with the operating system. As I said, I mean, keeping current, the platform means upgrading all of the parts. I showed you briefly what happened to hardware. We are doing the same with each of the versions as upgrades of ZOS. ZOS 2.5 was announced early in the summer and is becoming available now. I think the target date was a few days ago with the end of September. And I won't take you through a lot of details, but basically there are 4 areas in which we're concentrating our upgrades and focus. You wouldn't be surprised is to have a better experience and integration of Z in hybrid cloud, making sure that also through the operating system we are enabling AI being embedded in all of the applications as far as we can, and this is also a tight integration with DB2 and the other middleware. And then, of course, application modernization, which means a number of tools, and it means also making easier the experience of ZOS administrators, right? Bearing in mind that with the change in generation, more likely the people that will be running these systems are going to be younger and with less experience on the platform. And of course, it wouldn't be called Z if we wouldn't keep a very high attention on anything that has to do with cyber resiliency and with security. So, very briefly on what are the key things to bear in mind. Well, you know, there are a number of goodies inside the upgrades of ZOS 2.5. For instance, whether you're running Linux applications on ZOS or you are extending and renovating, let's say, the typical COBOL applications on Z, extending them for instance with Java applications. And we will see some of the technology that is helping to, let's say, make the journey better, right? One of the solutions has been around for a few years now, and many customers are adopting it, is the ZOS container extension, right? Which is a way of integrating cloud-native Linux containers directly into ZOS. And so this is an area where we're doing a lot of work with ZOS 2.5. We are doing a lot of work around COBOL and Java, and I will show this in a second, and some of the other areas that you can see here, with the last one being basically an enhancement that makes communication, TCP/IP communication internal to Z between ZOS and Linux, let's say, without the limitations of the version 1, which is basically one IP subnet. I was mentioning container extension. Why is it important? Because it's about protecting and extending the reach of what can be done on Z. And basically, it's a solution that allows you, as you can see here, highlighted in blue, it allows to build, deploy, and manage, and this is the key word, unmodified Linux on Z Docker applications on Z. And this without having to provision separately Linux resources. The good thing is that this will look like a Docker application by all means. So it's totally transparent to the developer, right? And the other good thing is that by doing this, you are inheriting all of the goodies of quality of service of Z, high availability, disaster recovery. You can benefit from the classes of workload manager to give priority to a workload against another. And most importantly, when we're talking about keeping costs under control, anything that runs here is, you know, most of it is zip eligible, which it means it goes to specialty engines and it's not causing the additional cost of software on the platform. COBOL Java interoperability. This is important because what we are making it easier for developers, let's say, to have a bidirectional exchange and integration between COBOL applications and Java. So if you are integrating COBOL applications with Java, now the ZOS language environment is supporting managing both address modes, 13-bit for COBOL and 64 for Java, within the same address space. And this is bidirectional, so you can do it to have in the same address space COBOL application, and you can do it from Java to COBOL. So this is definitely something that helps as well. Going a bit faster, what I want to show here is that we've got the clear roadmap for the future also for the languages and compilers. And without going through all of the details, I can tell you that, of course, we are working on the vNext, the next version of all of these products, and we are working on supporting what will come with the next generation of Z hardware, which we always refer to as zNext, right? So stay tuned for this part as well. On all of the subsystems, now in the set of charts that you're going to get, you'll find similar plans for future focus areas for all of the key middleware. I'm going to take you briefly through DB2, but you will find what are our plans around IMS, MQ, KICS, and so on and so forth. So you know that we've moved a number of years ago, we've moved, let's say, from waiting for the next version to release features, we went into what we call continuous delivery. So as an example, DB2 version 12, which is the one we have now, was announced basically 5 years ago, because it was October of 2016. Despite that, with continuous delivery, we are bringing new features as soon as we think they're ready for the market and they've been properly tested. So to give you an idea, since the general availability of DB2 version 12, we've brought to the market over 100 new features without, let's say, waiting for packaging of new versions. And this is really the goodie of the continuous delivery. You can see that there's a plan also for this year, and of course, there's a plan to support, to come out with DB2 vNext and support, of course, of all of the news that will be part of the ZNext hardware. I'm not going to take you through the details, but to tell you there are three main areas of innovation around the next version of DB2, and you're not surprised probably to see that there are three macroscopic areas around artificial intelligence infused into DB2, supporting the hybrid cloud experience better than today, and needless to say, strong and stronger integration with Z hardware, right? And, you know, enhancing things like the system recovery boost integration of DB2 with ZOS that I mentioned before. As I said, you'll find these other charts. I'm not going to take you through it, but as I said, I mean, there are similar detailed plans for all of the middleware. In a minute, I will be showing this video, but let me take you quickly through it. So I want to finish off this part with a bit of an outlook at what's coming next. And you might have missed it because this was announced at the Hot Chips conference in August, and maybe you were on vacation, and rightfully so if you were. But I mean, what we announced on August 23rd is we unveiled what's coming next on Z in terms of the new processor, which is called Telum. And this is going to be quite interesting because it's really a different architecture with the processors that we had this far in Z. And it's the first chip that is coming with technology created by our specific IBM Research Artificial Intelligence Hardware Center in Albany, New York. And one of the things is that it's got an on-chip accelerator for AI inferencing, and this will help customers, I'm thinking of financial services, insurances, but basically all of them, to be able to spot or improve the ability to spot fraud in real time, meaning while the transaction is running, instead of having to discover it afterward and decide what is the remedy for it. In a few seconds, we can kick off the video. What I want to tell you is it's a big innovation. It's an 8-processor core. You can see that the speed is somewhere still around 5 gigahertz, so stable with the previous generations. And the cache setup is completely different because with the next generation, we will do away with the level 3 and the level 4 cache. And what we're doing, we are boosting the level 2 cache. Each core has a 32 meg private L2 cache, and they're connected with a double ring, which means that you got 256 megabyte of a data highway that you can leverage. And with this, I think if we can set off the video just to show you what we announced. Thank you.
The Telum processor's AI capabilities have been specifically designed for low latency real-time AI so that it can be embedded in transaction workloads. To you as a consumer, that might, for example, mean that a model to predict credit card fraud can be applied in a way that the fraud gets detected in time before the transaction even completes. The chip contains 8 processor cores running at more than 5 gigahertz. The processor cores are what's executing the actual program. And then each processor core is connected to a 32 megabyte private level 2 cache, which contains the data so that the programs can get to the data they need to operate on very quickly. All the caches are connected with a ring. Think of this as a data highway along which we can send the data between the different caches when different programs need to communicate with each other. And that way we build up a 256 megabyte cache for the entire chip, holding a lot of data for all these programs executing on these cores. The AI accelerator has its own entry and exit to the data highway so that it can get to the data in the caches, perform the AI operation that's necessary, and then put the result back onto the entry to the highway, put it back into the cache, so that when the program continues using the AI result, that result is right there in the cache and readily accessible by the core. Up till now, there are chips that are dedicated to AI, and there are server processors that run enterprise workloads like databases and transactions. The Telum chip brings those capabilities together to enable our clients to embed AI directly into their transaction workload.
Okay. So, that's for the first part, and I hope you enjoyed it. So, briefly, before I hand it over to Hélène, central part, which is equally important, right? What do we do to keep this platform at best in terms of business continuity, resilience, and, of course, security? So, a couple of things that I would like to draw your attention to. I'm sure you've all seen data showing the trends around companies having problems and being hacked, and what is the cost of the breach. And I found these studies interesting because you can see that there are studies that happened during the full pandemic period, right? I mean, the sources are basically 2020, the Ponemon study. And this is one of the things that surprised me a bit. Now, you probably witnessed this in the in your own country, right? I can tell you, you know, I live in Italy, and I can tell you that we've seen a number of accidents due to hacking of public companies and others that are also caused by workers working remotely at home, right? Where, you know, the level of security is difficult to keep under control. So you can see that it was interesting to see that there was a gigantic increase in the number of breaches and incidents during these times of COVID-19, with a lot of a big part of the population that is working from home. So the threats are even increasing also due to the pandemic from this point of view. The other data to keep in mind with the study is that, unfortunately, since 2013, these have been the data stolen, right, or lost, about 15 billion, and it's sad to see that only 4% of that data that was cracked and lost was encrypted. And you can imagine the implications, because it means that you lose data, or they get unlawful access to your data, which is unclear, which means you know, all customer informations and things like that. And also what the study shows is that the likelihood of a given organization and company like all of ours of having a data breach in the next 2 years, it's rising to almost 30%. So if we had good reasons to chase reliability, cyber reliability and security, I think that during the pandemic this becomes even more of a priority. What we are helping customers, right? Many customers are coming to us and saying, okay, what can IBM do to help us with cyber security and cyber resiliency? And we've seen that many customers have some kind of a plan, but it's probably not a plan that is enough to put them back in business quickly if they have some kind of a ransom attack. So we have developed, given that Z is now tightly integrated in the cloud, is becoming more of a desirable target, right? So we've had technology there, and again, our approach is a stack approach with hardware, software, and services. We have developed a lot of technology. Remember what I took you through 10 or 15 minutes ago, right? There's a lot that we've done from a hardware point of view, but this is not enough, right? So what we brought to the market probably about a year ago is a total solution which is called Cyber Vault. And again, Cyber Vault is a stack solution, right? And it's basically creating a separate air-gapped data corruption environment that has all of the tools that you got in production, plus additional tools and services, and basically setting up the environment for you to be able to react to the cyber attack in the best way. right? And this is a complete solution, and it's priced like a solution edition, as you might remember. Why is it important? Because now I don't have the time to take you through it, but as I said, most customers have some kind of resiliency solutions in place. But for instance, they rely on one copy of the production environment. And if by chance that copy has been badly corrupted and you don't have a series of point-in-time recovery points, you might be recovering data that's already been damaged or corrupted. So the problem is not only being able to recover, but is knowing what you can recover with. Because if not, you're only going to make it worse, let's say. And you see that, for instance, a cyber vault is having multiple recovery points, and they can help you go through all of a number of steps depending on the damage and the size of the attack that you faced that can put you back in business. Now, I won't show you this, but I can tell you that the cyber vault is based, let's say, on a number of elements making up the solution. It's based on storage, which is DS8000 with safeguarded copies, and this is where you store many point-in-time recovery copies, so that once you have understood when the attack occurred and when the data was compromised, you can select the right copy, the right point-in-time copy to put it back into production. And then, of course, it's built on separate logical partitions under ZOS, and this is why it's an air-gaps solution. And it's based on GDPS services like LCP and CSM. Of course, we can help with the lab on setting this up. As I said, what stands aside Cyber Vault from other resiliency solutions is the fact that it can really allow you to do all of the key steps in cyber resiliency, right? Data validation, so that you know exactly what copies of the data are good and which are not, and you do what we call forensic analysis, understanding to what extent the data were corrupted. And then you can go back and recover surgically the data that you need. And knock on wood, you're ready even in case of a catastrophic recovery, because what we suggest is to have a totally offline backup copy of your production environment. And it can be also, there are two ways of putting in place Cyber Vault. Basically, you can use the same storage network of production, and what we suggest is that you have all separate devices and elements so that this is really bulletproof, and this is a physical isolation. So let me finish off saying, as you've seen, we've got a lot of things around cryptography and pervasive encryption. Remember, we introduced pervasive encryption with Z14, brought it to the next level with Z15, but pervasive encryption on its own is not going to give you a bulletproof solution. And by the way, you can encrypt everything you want all the way up to applications, even if encrypting application requires modifying applications, so it's something that should be done only in very selected cases. I was mentioning before, why should we worry about cryptography going forward? For a very good reason. This, if you've never seen one, this is a quantum computer, at least one of the IBMs. Very different, right? It looks more like something that could send out light and would be hanging from your ceiling rather than a typical computer, right? But as I said, the moment in which a quantum computer will be powerful enough to crack any kind of cryptography is somewhere down the road. And at this point, it's very hard to tell. It's not going to be 6 months or a year, but I mean, it might happen pretty fast. IBM is one of the key players in the world on this technology. We have a network which is open to developers and customers. It's called IBM Quantum. We announced in Germany 2 years ago the first system, the Q System 1, Quantum System 1, relatively small. You see we have a roadmap that in 2 years, less than 2 years, 1 year and a quarter, should bring us to develop a quantum computer which has 1,121 qubits, right? And so this is why it's important it's going to come. And what we have is, we can help customers like you put together, let's say, a mapping of your maturity milestone for quantum safe cryptography. I mean, there are a number of activities that we can carry out. And basically what we suggest is that we help you do discovery sessions in which we understand where you use encryption and do what we call a crypto inventory, and then help you to design the evolution of cryptography so that you will be protected going forward for the next decade. I'm going to leave you with two charts that are showing you what you can get in terms of support and services from IBM. We got a specific crypto competence center in Copenhagen here in Europe, and there are a lot of things that they can take you through. I'll finish off with two solutions that are key, in my view, to put in place the best cyber resiliency and security solutions on Z. There are two products that go on top, let's say, of pervasive encryption. One is called Enterprise Key Management Foundation Web, and the other one is HyperProtect Data Controller. These are key because basically the first one allows you to have a centralized management of keys, right? And all of the activity around keys is logged so that it can be audited. You know exactly what happens to all of your keys. And the good thing is that it's open already to cloud key management. You can bring your own keys, and you can manage the keys also if you're using, you know, some of these forms of cloud over here. And finally, as I handed off to Hélène Lyon, I would say the other solution is called HyperProtect Data Controller, and this one is key because basically it's a data-centric protection solution. It means that you can apply cryptography to all of the data as it moves from, for instance, ZOS onto other platforms or onto a cloud, and the protection stays with the data. You can enforce an enterprise policy on who gets to see and access what kind of data, and the request goes to a broker, and the broker will decide, based on the policy that you have defined as a company, will define how the data is going to return. Can decide that Adam is going to get some masked data because I'm a sales guy, and can decide that Hélène gets all of the data totally clear because it's part of her job. And the good thing is that the protection stays with the data as it moves off of the system of records, and the keys to decrypt the data can be canceled, can be pulled at any point in time, which makes that any copy of the data that is sitting around anywhere in the cloud becomes useless because you no longer have access to the keys to decrypt. With that, I hope you're still alive. I've gone over, but I said it at the beginning, and I will hand it over to Hélène. Thank you very much.
Ça marche, ça marche. Alors, je viens d'un village gaulois et j'ai réussi à parler avec un Romain. C'est quand même incroyable, ça. Je m'appelle Bonnemine. Bon, désolé pour les Belges, j'ai pas trouvé avec Tintin. Hein. Mais bon. Donc, thanks Adam to welcome me as a Roman. Not sure you understand the joke, but I will tell it later after a drink. Mon sujet aujourd'hui, je vais vous parler du cloud. Et je suis super contente de vous parler du cloud. Ça vous surprend? Un peu, ouais, je comprends. Je vous ai pas habitué. Mais je vous aime. Et je veux vous faire comprendre que vous êtes super contents. Vous avez énormément de chance d'être un client Z. Alors, on parle partout de cloud hybride. Alors moi, j'ai mon petit village gaulois. Et mon rôle depuis plusieurs années, c'est de faire comprendre que le village gaulois, il sait communiquer avec le cloud. Et que la valeur pour les entreprises, c'est justement d'arriver à faire parler ce Romain, même s'il me prend mon temps, je suis habituée, un plus haut, et le mainframe. Donc, il y a quelques années, j'avais fait un dessin parce que quand le cloud est arrivé, tout était toujours compliqué dans les présentations IBM. Il y a toujours plein de charts, il y a toujours plein de textes. Et je m'étais dit, il faut que j'arrive à synthétiser ce qu'est un cloud. Et donc, pour les gens, on expliquait, il y avait du on-premise, cloud privé, et du off-premise. Le IBM Cloud, Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft, tout ça. Et qu'en fait, mon activité principale ces dernières années, c'était de faire comprendre que tout ça travaillait très bien ensemble pour votre bénéfice. Alors, bon, le texte, vous le disiez, c'est une étude d'IBM Institute for Business Value qui est parue cette année, donc ils sont tout à fait d'accord avec moi. Bon, il y a eu l'IBM Z-day fait par IBM, dans lequel Forrester a présenté une session, et je vous ai mis le lien, qui disait exactement la même chose. Donc on va y croire. On va y croire que le cloud est important et que l'intégration du Z dans le cloud est important. J'aime beaucoup ce schéma parce que vous allez en entendre parler cet après-midi des applications dites cloud natives versus les applications dites legacy. Legacy, des choses qu'on dit anciennes, mais c'est aussi le patrimoine, et c'est pour ça que vous êtes là aujourd'hui, parce que votre patrimoine assure votre service depuis 50 ans, continue d'évoluer, continue d'être modifié pour fournir de la valeur, et vous allez voir des exemples de justement comment NRB a fait des transformations de ses applications et de l'architecture de ses applications legacy pour qu'elles rendent de la valeur business sans être des cloud natives, complètement. Et donc, on va voir que ça va évoluer. On va continuer à faire évoluer notre legacy, nos applications traditionnelles, tout en développant aussi des applications dites cloud natives. Et clairement, il y a des solutions pour porter les deux et fournir de la valeur au quotidien. Donc ça, c'est vraiment important. Alors moi, dans les actes de modernisation autour du cloud hybride, on parle toujours de digital transformation, il y a toujours des beaux mots. Et moi, j'aime bien faire le découpage en 3 parties. Je sépare toujours les problématiques liées aux données, liées aux applications et liées au processus IT. Pour moi, c'est clé. Parce que des fois, on mélange un peu tout. Donc, comme je veux simplifier, je trouve ça très bien. C'est pas forcément du Z, c'est vraiment de l'architecture. Et on va avoir des problématiques d'intégration et des problématiques d'automatisation des business process au fil du temps. Donc, vous lirez plein de choses qui concernent justement ce découpage. Et ce qui est important, c'est de se dire, les données du Z sont importantes, il faut travailler avec. Les applications du Z sont importantes, il faut les ouvrir. Et c'est ça qu'on va voir dans les 5 prochaines minutes. Donc là, j'ai un chart que j'appelle toujours Back to Basic sur le Z, dans lequel vous trouverez plein d'avantages du Z. C'est celui-là que vous pouvez toujours utiliser quand vous parlez du Z, avec clairement sa partie ZOS, qui est... je suis né là, je mourrai là, chez IBM. Je suis rentré à IBM pour être admin système MVS, et je quitterai IBM dans pas très très longtemps en étant architecte ZOS. Donc, le ZOS, c'est le cœur de ma vie, et je veux continuer à montrer que c'est un runtime pour les applications et les données super performant. Et quand on voit Telum qui vient d'arriver, Telum, c'est pour arriver à vous faire mettre du real-time analytics dans vos applications traditionnelles CISS ou IMS. C'est tout à fait ça. Alors, un certain nombre de solutions peuvent être portées par Linux on Z, à partir du moment où on décide de faire des transactions, on va dire, distribuées. Linux on Z peut être un environnement de déploiement super important. Et puis, ce qui est important pour vous aussi, souvent vous êtes de l'IT, d'investir dans la simplification et l'industrialisation des processus IT. Donc j'en ai marqué un certain nombre là. On parle de DevOps beaucoup, on parle d'intégration, on parle d'IT management, on parle d'automatisation, on pourrait rajouter le DR, le Disaster Recovery. Tous ces process, on doit les penser de bout en bout, parce que maintenant, on parle de bout en bout. Et donc, on va avoir des processus de l'entreprise qui vont du multi-cloud public au Z, en incluant potentiellement des clouds privés. Donc, très très important de se dire les axes dans lesquels on va pouvoir travailler. L'axe le plus important sur lequel je travaille avec certains de la salle, et vous aurez des présentations à ce sujet, c'est l'intégration, la cloud intégration. Et donc, je vais regarder mes applis, je vais regarder mes données, et on va voir comment les améliorer pour qu'elles continuent à s'intégrer dans ce processus de bout en bout, tout en fournissant de la valeur pour vos métiers. Donc, j'ai mis un certain nombre de logos, je ne sais pas si vous les connaissez tous. On parle de REST API, vous allez en avoir une belle démonstration. On parle de Java, Et Adam a parlé des améliorations de Java. Là, c'est les règles métiers. Et clairement, NRB a une compétence assez unique sur le produit ODM, qui est le gestionnaire de business rule d'IBM. Et ils vont en parler aussi dans leur pitch. Et là, on peut rêver, rajouter des modèles mathématiques, appeler des modèles mathématiques pour faire du real-time analytics super rapidement, sans impacter la performance des applications grâce au Telum processor. Donc ça, c'est vraiment la cloud intégration. J'ai bien mis in et out. Ça veut dire que le Z, il peut appeler des services du cloud. On peut enrichir les applications du Z en appelant des services du cloud. Et le cloud peut appeler des services du Z. Quand je dis Z, là, c'est ZOS. Autre sujet extrêmement important, c'est acquérir l'expérience du cloud. C'est pas les processus du Z qu'on gagnait, c'est pas les méthodologies de ZOS qu'on gagnait. On n'a pas réussi à faire du SMP sur le cloud, ça n'a pas réussi bien. Hein. Bon, je sais pas si ça nous manque. Hein. Mais ce qui est important de se dire, c'est tous les gens qui travaillent sur l'open source, sur les méthodologies cloud, on doit leur permettre aussi de gérer les assets du Z. Et on va voir que c'est dur pour nous, j'imagine pour vous aussi, de se dire « Oh, je vais m'ouvrir, je vais créer un nouveau monde avec cette vision de bout en bout. » Et ça, le village gaulois, il doit le comprendre. Donc les vieux de la vieille, là, ils vont prendre leur potion magique et ils vont aller parler avec les Romains pour que ce dialogue ait lieu. Et on va en voir. On parle de REST API aussi pour le système management. On parle de Zoe. On parle de OpenShift, qui permet aussi l'orchestration de choses vers le ZOS. Et on parle d'Ansible pour tout ce qui est automatisation. Donc ça, c'est vraiment des images extrêmement importantes pour le futur du Z. Et il faut les adopter. Bon, le domaine que je ne traiterai pas ici, parce qu'après moi, il y a Guillaume qui va faire une presse Z sécurité, et Adam en a déjà parlé, c'est donc la sécurité. Donc juste un schéma, hop, très rapide. End-to-end, bout en bout, c'est un mot-clé pour moi. Du bout en bout pour le business. Depuis mon apps qui tourne sur mon mobile, comment j'interfère avec le Z. Donc, et ça doit être hyper bien monitoré, hyper agile, tout ça très bien. On a des solutions qui permettent, bon là j'ai mis ZOS Connect, hein, il y en a clairement d'autres, mais de fournir ce que j'appelle des API pour le business. Et là, on va faire du bout en bout dans un sens ou dans l'autre. On va aussi pouvoir faire des services ou des API au-dessus des datas pour éviter de bouger, sortir la donnée. La donnée, elle est sur ZOS, qu'on la laisse, elle est super bien gérée, sécurisée, parallèle sysplexée, enfin bon, partager tout ce qu'on veut. On la laisse là, par contre, on lui donne accès. Et les clients, en fait, on ne doit plus dire non aux requêtes du business. Si le business a besoin d'une transaction, a besoin d'une application, il faut lui donner accès. Si le business a besoin d'une donnée, il faut lui donner accès. Et on a déjà travaillé là-dessus chez NRB ensemble. Donc, Business API, on le voit. C'est très important. Et l'autre côté, ça va être les systèmes API qui vont permettre de créer cette fameuse cloud expérience. Et par exemple, depuis des processus qui tournent sur le cloud, de provisionner des systèmes sur ZOS, définir un user RACF, changer un profil. Alors derrière, il y a un peu de techno qui traîne. Hein. Le ZOSMF, vous l'avez vu arriver quand même depuis toutes ces versions de ZOS. Va falloir se mettre à l'utiliser. Vous êtes obligés bientôt, mais bon. Ça, c'est drôlement important de se dire, ça, c'est une brique qui n'est pas arrivée par hasard. Parce qu'on veut créer cette cloud expérience de bout en bout. Ansible, Cloud Broker, je vais pas détailler. Quand vous voyez le nouveau Master the Mainframe, la compétition qui existe depuis 10 ans, cette année qui s'appelle IBM Z Explore, on travaille en Zoe, ça m'énerve, il n'y a pas d'écran ISPF, ça me manque. On est en VS Code, on définit des fichiers, on joue avec les fichiers, enfin, j'ai vieilli, hein, il est temps que je m'en aille là. Mais pour les équipes système, c'est la clé. Il faut faire du bout en bout pour vos clients. Donc, pour atteindre, comme c'est marqué, le potentiel complet de votre Z dans le cloud hybride, c'est pas que du Z Linux. Il y a des choses à faire autour de ZOS. Il y a des choses à faire pour faire que le Z devienne la plateforme hybride qui va supporter vos applications critiques et vos données critiques sans les sortir, en intégrant des innovations dans vos applications. Voilà. Je vais terminer mon pitch. Et je ne sais pas si c'est moi qui donne la main. Tu viens? Oui, allez, fais la transition.
Merci Hélène.